straight out of maximum security, and today I'm going to talk to Harvey from Harveytalks prison. Hi, Harvey.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Great. So you spent quite a bit of time in prison, right?
Yes, I did. 29 years.
How old were you when you went to prison?
17. I was 17 when I got arrested.
17
I was
years.
18. I was about 18 when I hit prison.
Okay. And how old were you when you got out?
I was 46.
It's a long time.
Right.
What,
Yeah.
I guess we'll just go over this real quick. What did you go to prison for?
I went to prison for killing a guy that was abusing my brother, my little brother. My brother was 14 and he was 22.
Okay. And so prior to this, you had no experience in prisons or the criminal justice system or any of that.
None whatsoever. You know, I thought everybody who was in prison deserved to be there. You know, I had when I did think about the justice system, I had faith in it,
And
and
so,
I didn't.
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I didn't think about it much, but I just thought that everybody that was in prison was guilty or deserved to be there, and they got what they deserved.
Yeah. But when you left prison, you felt differently?
Oh yeah, completely differently. There's people in there that are good people; they just need a second chance. There's innocent people in prison. Uh, the justice system is corrupt, and it's all about money. It's business. Prison is a business, and as long as they got people going to prison, which they make sure of, their business is going to thrive.
That's a valid point. So you mentioned this, but how did your attitude towards inmates or ex-cons or whatever change through your time in prison?
When I first went to prison, I guess you could say, a little arrogant. I thought they shouldn't have put me in a place where all these people were at. These people deserve to be in here. I don't. You know, and uh, and that changed over time. I couldn't help but become friends with people. It just happened. And I got to know people, and I got to learn about people's different situations, and some people they're there because they had no other choice but to end up there, by doing the things they did. And it's not that they wanted to do those things; they just didn't have a choice,
Hmm.
you know.
That actually brings up another topic. One of your good friends is actually in prison and presumably innocent, right?
I believe absolutely he's innocent. I've spent years with him, and his story's never changed. I've read his paperwork, and the injustice that he went through, being coerced into signing a statement. He was there when it happened, but he was passed out, and he woke up during the midst of it. You know,
Yeah.
people could say that, well, he should have went to the authorities, and he says that himself. But that still does not take away from the fact that he did not do it. You know,
Yeah. So let me just mention we're talking about his friend Kevin, who is actually still in prison. He's been in prison for 34 years for a murder that we believe he didn't commit. So that's what we're kind of going over right now. Just one of the many that's in prison right now that is probably innocent of what they've been accused of, and how many years lost, for all these poor souls that didn't Just
Right,
happened to be
yeah,
in the
he went
wrong
in about
place at the wrong time or didn't speak up or who knows, you know?
yeah, he went in as a teenager too,
Yeah,
and
also 17. Yeah,
yeah.
it's very sad. Um, how did you feel being given such a long sentence at such a young age?
It's just well, given being given any sentence, I did not like it. I was offered 25 years, and to me, as a 17-year-old, that seemed like a long time. You know, that seemed like a lifetime to me.
Yeah.
But when I got the life sentence, I mean, I just could not believe it. It just, I couldn't fathom it.
Did you go through like any kind of depression or anything because of it?
I was down for a while, but that was mostly because seeing my family upset and grieving over,
Yeah. And that's another thing people don't really touch on too often is that when somebody goes to prison, very rarely are they going by themselves. They have a whole family behind them that goes right along with them because when someone you love is sitting in prison and you are helpless, it's almost like you might as well be there with them. It's very
exactly.
hard.
And in some ways, I think it may be worse on them because they don't know what they're going through all the time, and they don't, they're worried about their safety. You know, of course, the people in prison, they're worried about their own safety too, but the families, it's different because they don't, it's not like they're there with them. So they don't know at any time if they're going to get a call saying, their son or their husband or whoever has been killed.
Yeah. It is hard. I can tell you from my perspective, I have many friends and loved ones in prison, and it is hard because you guys get caught up in life in there and things just go the way they go. It's very different than being out here. So if we don't hear from you for a couple of days, the very first thing you think is something bad, every time. You can't, it's almost like you can't work yourself through it, until you hear from them and you know that they're okay because you're just blind, and there's been times when I had to call the wardens or the warden's assistants and just say, "Hey, can you just let me know that this person is still alive?" That's all I need to know because I'm
Right.
living in a panic. It's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. So
Yeah,
I can tell you
that's
not
what
to be.
my parents always told me. Always write, always call.
Please.
Because yeah, because any length of time, and you're in prison, you got time to write a letter. A lot of people say they don't, but they do. Um, any length of time, it just your family and your loved ones start worrying.
Especially
So
your
why people?
mom. In my
Yeah,
line of work, I have talked to so many poor moms who are just ripping their hair out and don't know what to do, and they're calling and they're writing and and I know sometimes when you're inside prison, it's sometimes you get in these frames of mind where you don't want to connect with the people on the outside because it might be just too hard for you at the time, or you're just trying to get it acclimated to your new life and schedule and everything. So that's understandable. But if you have a wife or a mom or a husband or anybody that's out here like caring about you and being there with you, if you could just let them know like I'm alive every so often, that is definitely helpful.
right. There's some people that just cut off all contact with the outside because, and and it's got to be painful for the ones that's out there. The loved ones.
It is. It is. Because you try to understand it and all you want to do is be there and help them, but they won't. Well, maybe this is your way of helping them, but it's just it's difficult for us because we want to be there with you and you guys don't want us to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's hard. But okay, so let's see. So, what are some things that you learned in prison that you wouldn't have if you were out here and never went to prison?
There's a bunch. I mean, I learned that.
Well,
I
you don't have to
learned
name
for
them all.
one.
Just
Well, I learned that people make mistakes. And I ain't talking about like just in my case. Because remember, I told you before, I thought that when I first got arrested, or before I was arrested, I thought everybody deserved to be there. And some people just make simple mistakes when they're young, you know. And I just learned that. Oh, and I also learned that no matter the color, the background of the person, their culture, whatever, there's good and bad in every person, no
yeah.
matter who they are.
hmm Sometimes it's just kind of you are a product of your environment. Like what you grew up in and the people you grew up with are all you know. So you
Right,
kind of fall into these little things that you might not have done or crimes that you might not have committed if you hadn't been in the place or with the people that you were and things like that. So,
right. There's people that I've talked to people that grew up in bad neighborhoods and stuff, you know, and the reason they're in prison is what was they supposed to do? Just go out and get a job? They're in an area that's bad.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of that, I've talked to people about why is our, you know, r- recidivism rate so high, and it's like they think that these people want to go back to prison or something, like it's something they do on purpose. But if you look at the way that our justice system basically blacklists you from life if you ever get convicted of a felony, it's like some of them probably don't have any other options other than, well, how am I going to feed myself? Nobody will hire me, or
Right.
you can't even barely get an education in this country if you're convicted of a felony. Lots of colleges will deny you even being entered into their programs. So you
So
wonder, how are they supposed to support themselves?
right. So, somebody comes from a bad neighborhood, commits a crime, goes to prison. When he gets out, the chances are he's going to go back to that same neighborhood.
Yeah, they usually
I
put
mean,
you back in that same neighborhood.
right. So, what is he to do? You
hmm
know,
Except pick right back up with everybody he knows, and
unless he
or
gets
he
out
or
of
she, I
his,
should say, and
yeah,
continue.
unless he or she gets out of that situation and goes to a different area away from people he knew and away from that bad neighborhood, he ain't got a chance.
Mhm.
I mean, it's slim chance. I mean, he's got a chance, but it's very slim.
Yeah, I think you have to be 150% determined that you're not going to go back. But even then, situations can be stacked against you very easily,
Yeah.
especially as a young kid. You're 17, your brain's not even fully developed yet to really understand how all encompassing your actions were going to
Right.
become.
Exactly. You don't see the ripple effect of how it's affecting all these different people,
Not until it's,
until later.
yeah.
Yeah, until it's too late. But I always tell people, I said, imagine a 17-year-old farm kid going into, at that time, the worst prison in Missouri, very violent, very bloody. He's not used to all that, around all these people that most of them, they grew up in violent neighborhoods anyway. And so this is just like a mini version of that.
Another day at home.
Yeah.
But for you, it was almost like this shock of, whoa.
And it was, and I remember, and my parents remember this too. They remember when I changed. It was like almost overnight. I'd been there a few months, and I told my cellie, well, my cellie seen me thinking about something, he brought me back out of it. And, but it was at that time that I said to myself, um, I got a life sentence. Don't know if or when I'm getting out. It seems like everybody's dying in here. Nobody better say anything to me that I don't like. And that's when I changed, from being a farm boy to, I guess you could say, a convict.
So this system can take a 17-year-old kid who has never had any experience in any kind of criminal activity and teach them how to be a criminal.
Teach them how to be a criminal and just mess up their minds. They come out completely different. You know, some of them may be good people when they went in and you just made a mistake, but learning from others and hearing other stories, people talking about their crimes and stuff, they may decide to want to do that when they get out. But some of them, like I said, many people just make mistakes. But when you're in a place like that, you're going to do things that are against the rules, against the law and everything. You can't help it. I mean,
That,
you got to defend yourself, you
right.
know.
Yeah, you do. And the another thing a lot of people don't realize is that there's prison politics that are very different from the politics or laws that we live by out in the free world. So you have to almost learn a new set of rules and skills and everything just to simply live in there and survive.
Right. And yeah, you got two rules. You got the rules set by the prison, and you got these rules, unwritten rules by the convicts.
Yeah.
And many people try to walk that thin line in between. It's hard to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't. If you slip up, you got to worry about either the DOC coming after you or, somebody with
Right.
some metal.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so you started at MSP, which is the walls. Were you like shocked or scared by like the violence and everything that was going on in there, or what were you feeling when you got there and you saw people dying and bleeding and just all the crazy stuff going on?
Before I got there, I'd heard stories. When I was at Fulton Diagnostics and Reception Center, I had people that had been there before tell me these stories, but I still wasn't prepared for it. It's just, I'm thinking, okay, it's prison. It's going to be violent. Oh, it was violent, all right. It was just bad. It was
Stepping over
unbelievable.
bodies and whatnot, huh?
Yeah, like on walks, when you're walking down the walk, if you live upstairs, you'd have to sometimes step over bodies. If he's on the bottom walk, you can walk around them. There's enough room you could walk around them. There was always people mopping up blood. I remember one story. One thing that happened. It was on the bottom walk. I lived in the first cell, so I could see it. And there was a guy out there mopping up blood. There'd been a fight. Another fight breaks out. One of the guys grabs the mop wringer that the guy was using and hits the other guy upside the head and almost takes the scalp, almost scalped him. And this guy that was mopping the floor, he was mad because there was just more blood he had to mop up.
Just a little hint of how different life is, right? Because
Right.
how hard was it for you to change your mindset and turn off your humanity and just step over people bleeding like it was another Tuesday?
It was hard, but I knew that if I stopped, or if I saw somebody bleeding or something, it didn't, if he wasn't a friend of mine or partner of mine, somebody I hung out with, and I stopped to help him, I could be next. But
It's amazing. And so, I mean, you couldn't even really show emotion about it, right? You just had to be straight faced and keep it moving?
right, and I think even if it wasn't, I think I would have anyway because I was changing, and it's hard to explain, but it's like I told you earlier, I felt that I was going to die in that place. So really, to heck with everybody else.
Yeah, you kind of became the every man for himself. That
Yeah, I just thought it was a matter of time. Um,
18, that's okay.
it,
Sorry, we're gonna say something?
no, I was just saying it's just strange how you change. And I wonder if I've always wondered if somebody that grew up as a with a criminal life and in bad neighborhoods, if they changed in prison, if it changed them because I know it did me, as a 17-year-old farm boy, but I hadn't been around a lot of violence.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I'm wondering
you,
if it. I mean, I know prison changes everybody, but I mean, I'm talking about their mindset towards being around. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I can tell you that, Mac, he grew up in a lot of places, but when he was arrested, he was living in LA and he was kind of used to that lifestyle. He was, dealing drugs and had some prostitutes that he was working with and whatnot. So I'm not sure if there was a whole lot of violence per se, but it was definitely a criminally minded atmosphere and lifestyle that he was leading. And even when he got to prison, he continued that. He continued doing drugs and hustling and, all the things that he was doing. It wasn't until I believe he said right around 20 or 21 years that he realized that if he didn't change that mentality, he was going to come right back. He was never going to get out. He quit doing
Right,
drugs, he quit smoking cigarettes, he quit like messing around with certain unsavory people. And he really like, put in the effort to change himself. So it's possible, but I don't know if everybody reaches that point. And I know that
right.
if
If
they
they can.
do, everybody hits it at a different time. It might be long after you left prison that you realize that. So it's hard to
Well,
say if everybody does it.
I do know one of the. It is the greatest feeling in the world is when I got out. I didn't notice it at first. I guess because being new to being out and everything, dealing with everything. But the first time that I showed kindness to somebody else, compassion, uh, I was just, it's just like all this weight just left me, you know.
That's actually a good point. You lost what, both your parents and your brother when you were in prison, and I mean, were you able to like grieve for that, or were you supposed to
I
just
didn't,
suck it up and move on?
you grieve, but you usually grieve and like alone. Like when my mom passed away, my cellie asked me what was going on because they called me out to the caseworker's office, and as soon as I told him, he got up and left to give me time alone, you know.
Okay.
But when my brother died, it was just something I couldn't control. It was just, and I really didn't care who saw or anything.
Well, at that point, I think everybody was very aware of who you were, what kind of person you were, and why you were there. So it must have been, just as kind of jolting as for everybody that was around you quite regularly. They were like, oh no.
Well, the prison I was in at the time is a low level prison, and there was a lot of people from my town there, and they knew Chris, so they was upset too,
Yeah.
and they actually kind of kept people away from me when I went down to the lower yard where there's nobody at.
Hmm.
But they was, especially three of them I knew, they was really upset by that.
It is a
You know,
very, very ironic and sad story, this everything that you had given up and gone through and fought through and survived to protect him, and then he's gone.
eight, yeah, 8 months before I got out, he was gone.
Hmm. It's hard to imagine that. So when you got out of prison, were you able to kind of like, I guess, go through more of your human emotions because of these things? Or did you?
Yeah, I was able to let more emotions out. Like I was telling you earlier, it was just like a relief. Like I didn't even really notice it at first, and it's just something that, wow, I can let these emotions out and stuff. I can show kindness to others. I think that was the biggest thing. Is it because it's just like I said, it's just like a weight just taken off of me.
Yeah, to have to change everything that you know and everything you are for 29 years to survive, it must be, I don't know, it must be very hard.
Now it's like now if I see somebody like in a car wreck or something that's bleeding real bad, the, the blood and stuff doesn't bother me, but I can show him compassion to that person, try to help that person,
Yeah,
you know. And like I said, in prison you really couldn't,
yeah,
or you shouldn't
you
anyway.
shouldn't, yeah. And that's just, a lot of us think, like you said when you first went in, that everybody in there is a bad person and they deserve it. But you don't think about the fact that there's a lot of people in there that aren't. They were a bad person for a day or a minute, or they made a
Right.
bad decision, or they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or anything at all. And these aren't psychopaths running around. Some of them are kind and loving and compassionate humans, and now they have to ignore
Turn
that
into
and
animals.
hide it. And then
Yeah, turn into animals,
right.
you
And then
know.
imagine the ones that humanity and they come out a worse person, you know what I mean? Instead of the not so terrible person they were when they got there. I guess I'll have to cut that out. I don't know where you lost me.
Um, right after where I said they turn into animals and you started talking.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like they take these kind and compassionate people who made mistakes and then turn them into people who don't have that anymore. You were lucky enough to be able to hang on to the core of who you are through 29 years in prison. And I can't imagine how many people can't do that. They
Right.
become
Don't
the
get me
animal.
right. Don't get me wrong. There's people in prison that, in my opinion, shouldn't be out.
Yeah, of
I mean,
course. Of
and they'll
course.
and they'll tell you that they're going to do the same things that they did before,
Yeah.
and some of it's horrendous stuff. They don't deserve to be out. But there's some in there that they talk about the things they want to try to do when they get out, and become a part of society.
Yeah, it's a
And
better.
it's all good and positive things. And some of them make it and some of them don't. you know?
Hmm. Okay, so I guess we should wrap this up today. I will link his channel in the description so you guys can check him out. This is Harvey, and thank you so much for doing this today.
No, no problem. You know, we're trying to help people, so that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're all here